All right. Good afternoon or morning or whenever we're going to watch this. But thank you for being willing to meet with the Little Elm High School students about first responders. We are studying the criminal justice system, and the 911 dispatcher is the first responder. So I wanted to give them an opportunity to talk to somebody who had actually been in the trenches and had the stories, not secondhand. I've given them some, but it's totally different coming from someone who's actually really sat there and done what you did. So this is Christine Downs, and she has been a 911, well, she's been a first responder for about 25 years. Is that a fair amount of time? And she started out as an EMT, and I'm going to have you tell the story about the foot. I don't think I mentioned that. I love that story. And then we're going to talk a little bit about EMT, but mostly about your time in dispatch. And Christy started out like dispatching the old people ambulances, right? And then went into actual police dispatch and ended up being supervisor and all kinds of stuff. So I'll let you.
Kind of.
Yeah.
So when I got out of the Marine Corps, I was kind of just at a loss for what to do. Nobody tells you, when you have a plan, when you have a plan for what you want to do with your life and that doesn't work out, you kind of are just at a loss and you're not really sure what you want to do. So we lived in a very small town in Southeast Texas, and there was a banner on the local volunteer EMS department, and they were looking for volunteers for the EMS department. And I very naively thought, I've watched Rescue 911. That looks like fun. I could do that. I could ride in an ambulance. Why not? So I signed up. And my very, very first call was CPR on a 98-year-old man. And that was interesting. It was in a nursing home. And I thought, okay, that wasn't bad, because he had passed away. He was gone. And then my very next call was what we call a 1050 major. And that was a major accident with rollover with ejections. It was this lady had been riding in the front seat of the car with her foot up on the dash, and the car had rolled and severed very cleanly, all but the Achilles tendon of her foot. And you could see it had cut so cleanly, you could see the bone marrow, the ligaments and tendons, and the paramedic said, "Here, hold this," and had me hold the foot up to the shin of her foot. It was like, "Here, hold this together." And I was like, okay. And so I'm just not a squeamish person, and I used to watch the videos of operations, and I thought that was cool. Something's morbid about people that get into this industry, right? We don't get into it because we're squeamish. So of course, you do and peek at it, and he was like, "Don't do that." Okay, sorry. And so you push it back together, and they bandaged it, and I had to hold her foot like that the entire ride to the hospital, and I was hooked. That's
you came home.
I'm ready.
That was the most excited. I can't even remember seeing you so excited about holding this lady's foot. That was the beginning.
So I signed up for EMT school the next semester. As soon as I could, I was enrolled in EMS school. So I got my EMT certification very shortly after that. And then as quickly as I could, I was in paramedic school after that. And then, so that started my EMS career. And I worked for Orange County EMS in Southeast Texas, and then worked for MedStar Ambulance up here in the Fort Worth area, which is a very, very high volume EMS service. We worked anywhere from the Burleson, we worked from Burleson all the way up to Denton County, from DFW all the way out until up into the Alito line. So it's a huge service.
You're in, you don't, one ambulance doesn't go every which way. You
No,
have
anywhere from 6 to 15 ambulances at a time. And we worked up in a 24-hour period. We were running, we had the capability to run 600 calls in a 24-hour period, especially during the summer. So it's a huge, huge service area as far as the call volume. So we were very, very busy all the time. With any number of, you could be running ambulance, nursing home calls, all the way up to major incidents, you know, major casualties, to structure fire standbys, to suicide calls, to, you know, I've testified in a capital murder case, to I've testified in a kidnapping case.
So talk a little bit about that, about when would a first responder be called in to testify in court on what happened?
So a first responder is also a witness. When you step on scene of any kind of call, when that becomes a crime scene, your eyes and your hands become witnesses. With that kidnapping case, that became a capital case because it was attempted murder as well. So I, as the first responder on that, and the medic that took care of her, I had to testify because my patient record, with everything that I wrote, everything that you write in that patient record can be called to court. Absolutely everything that you write down, and everything that you don't write down. So you have to be very precise and very accurate with everything that you put down in your patient records. Or even if you're a police officer, everything in your reports, everything you do and don't say can be called to court once you step on scene. You are a witness, even though you're the responder and you're in charge of that scene. Because once I step on scene of a medical call, that's my scene. I supersede the police department as well. That medical call becomes my call. That's not the police officer's call anymore. That's my call. So, you know, once lawyers start asking, well, you know, do you actually remember this? Yes, I do actually remember that. I was wearing purple gloves. The comforter was yellow. Her pants were black. She was missing a shoe. This was over 17 years ago, this call was, and I still remember those call details. That's how important it is that you pay attention to the things that happen on your call. So I can tell you that she was blonde. I can tell you that all of these things happened in this order.
Yeah. Yeah. So before we get out of EMS, one of the things that the kids are very interested in are the stories of the calls that you have made. And I know that there are several that you have historically not spoken about. After you told me this happened, it was like painful, and I don't want to talk about it. And I went looking because there was a picture of you as a paramedic at the Fort Worth
Water Garden.
Can you tell a little bit about that, from the time you got the call until your debrief?
Yeah. So that was probably, so I'll tell you that
That was before you had children, but
that was
still,
before I had kids.
you kind of always had that children.
I will tell you, I'll give you guys a piece of advice, because everybody, that's the first question that everybody wants to ask a first responder was, what's the worst call you've ever had? Be kind to first responders. Maybe don't ask that question so much. Okay. Maybe ask what's the call that made you want to be a first responder so much? What's the call that made you want to stay? Because the calls that are our worst calls, those calls stay with us forever.
And they're worst for, you see them.
And they're the worst for a reason. This call's going to make me cry.
You don't have to talk about it. That's,
no, I'll talk about it because they need to see the effects that those calls have, that first responders are real people. We got a call. I had just started my shift. Literally, we weren't even done getting our ambulance together. And we got our supervisor come running out to the truck and said, we're getting a call at the water gardens. There's an incoming call for a possible drowning. How fast can you guys get out of here? And we, me and my partner at the time, threw the airway bag on the truck and said, we're going. And we hauled ass. We went. And our ambulance, our sirens were going before we ever got out of the parking lot. And we were not even 10 minutes from the water gardens. That's how close the base was. And we made it there in 6, maybe 5. And when I pulled up on scene, we were the first ambulance on the scene. And the only other responder there was a police officer. We saw his cruiser. And jumped out of the truck. And I grabbed the airway bag, and he grabbed the trauma bag. And we went running. And if you guys have ever been to the Fort Worth Water Gardens, I'm sure Penny will show you a picture of how they come down in a big V, and there's a couple of them. But there's steps leading down all the way. And this patrol officer's gun belt was at the top. And I grabbed his gun belt because his gun was still in it, in his radio. And I grabbed his gun belt and his radio. I started looking for him. I couldn't see him. And a couple steps further down, we found a boot. So we're running down these steps, and I'm picking up pieces of this patrol officer's uniform. And we get all the way to the bottom, and I have his vest and his gun belt and his boots and his shirt. And I'm looking for this patrol officer, and I can't find him. And he pops up out of the water. And I was like, what the hell? I said, we got a call for a drowning. He said, I think I felt an arm. I said, what? He said, I think I felt an arm, but I can't. The water's too strong. I can't pull him up. About that time, a fire truck pulled up. And the fire guys jumped in. We got the officer out of the water because he was tired. So we got the officer out of the water, and the fire guys got in, and they were tying off ropes. I couldn't get these kids out of the water, and we had just gotten word of what had happened. And apparently this little girl, apparently a Baptist church was in town for a choir convention or something. And their pool was closed because of construction or maintenance. So they brought all these kids and stuff to play in the water gardens. And this little girl was playing on the edge and wanted to get in. She jumped in, and there had been a storm the night before, and it was windy. I mean, it was Texas thunderstorm. And a bunch of brush and stuff had been blown into the bottom of this water garden, the bottom of the pool, and was clogging the drain. So the pump system was working overtime. And the suction was working overtime, so it was pulling really hard. So this little girl got drugged down. Her brother saw her go in, so he went in after her. She was 6. Her brother was 8. The cousin was 11. Their dad, who was 6'6", 285 pounds, was 32 years old. Here's the thing with drownings. When it's cold water, your body goes into life over limb. And it starts to pull blood from your extremities. To keep your organs going. It slows your heart rate down. It slows your breathing down. It pushes blood into your brain and into your heart so that we have a better chance of reviving you once we get you up and out of that water and we can warm your body up. It was in the middle of summer, right around now. About 100 degrees outside. That water was bathroom temperature. But I never had a chance. And I remember standing at the bottom of those water gardens. And I turned around and looked up to call for the 3rd ambulance. And I remember saying very specifically, "Next star 46, emergency traffic." And as I said that to my dispatch center, I looked up and I looked into this mother's eyes, and she looked down at me and yelled, "Please don't let my babies die. Please don't let my babies die."
But there was
babies were already gone.
Yeah.
And there was nothing I could do. And
so thank you for sharing that. I know that's hard. I know that I think I've only heard that story one time, and it was 2004, I think, when it happened. So thank you for being willing to share.
And I almost walked away from EMS that day. And I got diagnosed with PTSD that day or shortly thereafter. And that was the day I almost walked away from EMS.
But you
And
stayed.
those are going to be calls. Those are going to be calls that if you get into EMS, there's going to be calls that affect you like that. But those are also the calls that make you stay.
And there are other days. I know. So there are some funny ones that you have told me about frequent flyers that just want to ride to the hospital.
2 days later, I delivered a baby.
There you go.
2 days later, I delivered a baby. I've delivered 13 babies. There are
Babies
13
on the
babies out there.
ambulance or 13 total?
There are 12 babies from the ambulance and 1 over the phone.
Cool. Awesome. Okay, so the one over the telephone, I want to talk a little bit about when you started when you started 911 dispatch, you had your patch. You were already medical trained.
Yeah, I was a paramedic.
The beginning of when you started 911, you couldn't have delivered that baby because they wouldn't have let you.
No. So when I started with 911 dispatch, we did not have pre-arrival, what were called pre-arrival instructions. There was no emergency medical dispatch protocol in our call center. So we were not allowed to give pre-arrival instructions. So if somebody was in cardiac arrest or having difficulty breathing, or if somebody had drowned, you were not allowed to give CPR instructions. I couldn't tell you to pull somebody out of the water.
But now, tell us a little bit about, yeah.
A little bit about I've been able to tell you what to do for that somebody. But now, because of the pre-arrival instructions that we were able to get into that call center, now they're able to read through that script that lawyers and doctors and other medics have gone over and, you know, dotted every I and crossed every T and gone over and made sure that, you know, all of that is as it should be. And they're able to have untrained personnel read those word for word, and the way one person answers a question will determine what the next question is.
It's like a tree. So you if I said yes, they're breathing on the screen, there's a yes, they're breathing. Now these are the instructions you say, and you say exactly the way that it's on the page or this screen. So now you actually can deliver a baby. And could you go outside of that script because you had a patch?
Absolutely not.
No, you still had to do exactly the script.
No, that leaves you open for legal repercussions if you go outside the script. It doesn't matter if you have a patch or not. Okay.
Now, several people asked how you became a 911 dispatcher, and I thought it was funny what you said. So
I didn't want to be a dispatcher. That wasn't my goal. I wanted to be in the muck and in the heat, and I wanted to be, you know, in the mix of it all. I was very happy being a paramedic and on the street and on the box and in the business. And I got pregnant. And I got put in dispatch because I could not get the stretcher around my belly. And the firefighters were concerned because I kept lifting the stretcher when I wasn't supposed to be lifting the stretcher. And they were afraid that I was going to deliver the baby on scene. So I got put in dispatch. And then I got really good. I realized that I was really good at telling people where to go and how to get there.
Yeah. So that is, I love that. So, okay. How would a normal person become a 911 dispatcher? You're not normal. I just want you to know that.
I am not normal. I've never been normal.
So how would someone go about 911 dispatcher?
So I've had several people ask, you know, how would I get into that? How would I get started doing that? And what I tell people is I would find, if you're interested in doing that, if that's something that you think that interests you, you know, if you've heard 911 calls and you're like, oh, that would be cool. I think I would be interested in taking 911 calls. What I would tell you is find a high call volume center, not somewhere small, not, you know, I would find So when I lived in Little Elm, it was much smaller than what I think it is now. So I'm not sure what their call volume is now, but I would find somewhere like Frisco, Plano, yeah, even go to Dallas, come to Fort Worth, find.
My experience of those two centers are that they're so big that it's so regimented into this person does just this and this person does just that and this person, they don't get a full experience of what is it really like to be
wherever you can get in to find a high call volume. So here's a good, for what I did, find a lateral call volume center.
What does that mean?
I was a call taker and the dispatcher. I did it. I took the call and I dispatched it. So there's it where there's not a break where, oh, they do the call taking and they do the dispatching. Find a lateral call center where they call take and they dispatch in the same room. Right. Even if it's like you have one that's doing call taking tonight and the other one's dispatching, fine. But where they're call taking and dispatching next to each other, find one like that. And then sit in there for at least a week, at least.
Because there are and then figure out times and busy times.
Yes, do different. Sorry, my nose is still running for me crying. Figure out, go different times of the day, different, hours, different days of the week. Make sure you go in on the weekends, because weekends are a different animal. Weekend nights are a different animal. If you can get a full moon or like a cold front, because babies will be born and old people will die and crazy people come out at night and during the full moon. Those things happen and people are like, oh, you're superstitious. I am. There's things that we believe in EMS and first responders. There's superstitions that we have. You don't wear new boots on an ambulance, and you don't say, oh, it's quiet. Don't ever say those words.
I've gotten yelled at several times. Mom, what are you doing?
Don't ever say those words in a call center, over the radio, on the ambulance. You will be ostracized and, maybe beaten. I'm joking. Yeah, those, but we have superstitions and it's, it's fine. It's whatever. But seriously, go sit with them, and they appreciate it. They appreciate the interest in their profession, but go ask them questions. Go ask them what they do. Go show interest in their job, and they'll show you things, and they'll tell you stories. Yeah. And they'll teach you about their job, and they're more than willing to show you their toys and, the stuff that they get to work with, and, they'll probably complain about their job and, what they don't get paid. And because let me tell you, dispatchers do not get paid what we deserve. We are the lowest hanging fruit.
How, I forgot, that just blew what I was thinking out of my brain, because they absolutely don't get paid. In your call center in Shirts, which was that kind of lateral, really busy kind of call center, how many different kind of calls do you think you took, and how many on a busy day? How many do you think you took?
All of them, right? I mean, it depended on it depended on the time of day, the time of year, whether it was a holiday, what was happening, the season. There's so many factors into what's happening. Politically, what was going on, the weather outside, whether the moon was aligned with the sun. It just depends. There's no telling what kind of call you're going to get. There were days that the phone didn't ring for a 13-hour shift, and then there were days where I sat down and my butt never left the seat. I couldn't get up to pee.
What would you say is the hardest part of being a 911 dispatcher?
Everything I just said.
That's what I was wondering. Yeah. Boredom one time and then not even being able to see.
The calls you take, the calls you don't take, the lack of pay. There's all of it. It's a blessing and a curse.
Tell me about the blessing. Why did you did it for a really, really long time? Why did you do it?
Because you never know what you're going to get. It's that whole Forrest Gump theory. It's like a box of chocolates.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have no idea what you're going to sit down to. Every day you sit down to that console and you have no clue what you're sitting down to. There were days I can tell you, I sat down one day and was in the middle of, she was a phase 3 trainee, right? So she was getting ready to be kicked loose. It was just me and her. She was phase 3 training. So I was ghost mode at that point. Like I was a safety net at that point.
Thank gosh, though.
I was a safety net at that point. And my coworker who should have been there called in with food poisoning last minute. And I said, she's phase 3 training. She should be fine anyways. We've got this, right? She had been perfect up until that day. Perfect up until that day. She'd been kicking back returns for police officers, no problem. Doing EMS calls, critical EMS calls, no problem. She'd been doing great. I got a 911 call from an alarm company. It was a bank robbery in progress. Police officers on scene. I was calling an active pursuit. When you're calling an active pursuit, I am on the radio with officers, 90 miles an hour, I-35 southbound, passing mile marker 175, copy, passing mile marker 175, approaching 95 miles an hour, passing mile marker 176, copy, passing mile marker 176, pursuit. I mean, you're repeating everything they say. She's got a 911 call incoming. Now she's giving CPR instructions and she froze, freaked out, started crying, said, I can't do this, and backed away from her console. What? What? So now I have to, and I should not have said it, should not have done it, and I almost got in really big trouble. But I swung around as I'm now almost in the splits like this.
Because they are not right next to one another. They're across the room from one another.
Well, no, it was about a 5-foot spread because it was the one right next to mine, thank God. And so now I've got my cord stretched as far as it can go, calling a pursuit, and I spun around and kicked her chair, like Judy Chalk kicked her chair out of the way and said, get the F out of my way. I'll do it my effing self. And her monitor was keyed up. So it went loud and proud all over the radio.
And that is a very big no-no. The effing, that is a very
big no-no. That's a departmental no-no. That's a city council no-no. That's a everybody no-no. And she went, I'm sorry. And so now I did CPR instructions and called a pursuit at the same time.
Because you're bad.
Because I had to.
Yeah.
Because I had to.
Yeah. And then the chief came in because
so the EMS chief came in and went, you want to explain something to me? And I went, I'm sorry. And she still, I'm still dealing with now an arrest, a felony arrest.
Which there's a lot of things that go into that. It's not just the police officer's handcuffing. You have done a humongous amount of computer work to follow all of that.
Yes. Now I've had to do a criminal background, and I've got guns drawn, and I'm documenting all of this. I'm doing a felony arrest, and I've got CPR finishing, and now I've got an ambulance running hot to the hospital, and we've run several more EMS calls, and I'm running traffic for 3 other police officers who decided in the middle of my felony arrest to run traffic stop, which is rude.
Right?
They hear that. The channel was closed, but sure, let's run traffic. So I'm doing that. And the EMS chief came in.
Okay, so hang on a second. Let's go back for just 1 second. When you say the channel is closed, explain that, because they won't understand that. When a pursuit happens.
When a pursuit happens, when the officer says, search 365, I'm in pursuit of a white Honda Civic, let's just, for whatever, I don't remember what kind of vehicle it was. A white Honda Civic with this 28, which is a license plate. With this 28, and they give me license plate number, and I say copy, in pursuit, white Honda Civic, and I repeat the license plate number. And they start giving me locations, and I say copy. Shirts PD, show this channel closed, emergency traffic only.
And somebody decided to run traffic.
So emergency traffic only means don't show your radio keying up unless you were involved with that pursuit. That's it. And then, so if you want to run traffic on that, it better be involved with that pursuit, or I'm gonna have your ass. And I did later.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now I'm sorry. Go ahead, back to the chief.
So the chief came in. So I've run their traffic, and I'm doing the felony arrest, and I've got an ambulance running hot to the hospital, which means lights and sirens. And I've got a few other EMS calls, and now I'm doing both consoles still by myself. And now what I've done is I've just moved her EMS channel to where I can key up on both channels on my own console, so that I'm not having to go back and forth to hers. And I'm just doing it all on one console now. So the EMS chief came in and he said, "You want to explain something?" And I said, "Look, I'm sorry. That was a big no-no. That was on me. I apologize. I didn't realize the radio was keyed up. I'll take that ass chewing all day. That was on me." She's still behind me crying in the corner. She has still yet to step up and do her job. Still, she decided that this job was not for her later that day.
She decided, or somebody decided for her?
She decided, but she was phase 3 training, which means she was at the end of a 6-month training program. So all that to say, it takes about 6 months for us to even get you hired once your application program starts, once your application process starts. So you put your application in, it takes a city about 6 months to hire you.
I was so surprised.
To go through the interview process, to go through the application process, the background process, the interview process, to get you hired on, to do all that.
Yeah.
And then to get you through all of the training and kicked loose onto your own is at least 6 months.
So tell me what they do when you were training people, because you trained a lot of everybody who went through that center. Mm-hmm. What was your system to train them?
The first month, all you did was listen. You sat next to me or another trainer, and all you did was listen. That's all you did. We tied you in to, it was like a Y harness. We tied you in, and all you did was listen to somebody else take calls and dispatch. That's all you did was listen. Because what we have to do is develop what I call your dispatcher ear. So every time you got off a call with, if I took a call or dispatch, when I took a call, I got off that call and say, "Okay, what did you hear?" "Well, what do you mean, what did I hear?" "Well, what did you hear? What did you hear in the background?" what did you hear when I asked you this call? When I asked you this, what did you hear her say? What did you hear in the background when this was happening? When she said she was here, what did you hear in the background? What did you hear going on around her? Because it's not just what they tell you, it's what's happening around them.
And all the time that you're taking the call, this is what one of the things I wanted to impress upon them is you are typing everything in to your CAD system as it's happening, and that is then record. You don't go back and erase, oh no, I don't think that happened. I need to take that out. While you're typing, you may be able to go back and say, replace the T and the H to make a word spell correctly. But that is law once it's in that CAD.
Yes. Yeah. Once it's there, it's there.
Okay, so after she just sits there, then what?
Then we let you start taking calls and I listen. And so we start prompting you with, okay, so now you need to ask this. Now you need to ask that. Now you need to ask this. And little by little, we let you start taking the call more and more on your own with and then from there, then phase 3 is when we start you in on the dispatch side of it.
Okay. So that answered a question about how long did it take to become a 911 dispatcher. It didn't take you that long because you had some history, but it takes about a year total before you're a for real dispatcher.
Ish.
Yeah. Did you ever want to say, forget it and just walk away from 911?
Probably about once a week.
What made you want to do it?
Oh, if it wasn't one of the other dispatchers or an officer, it was a joke. We had officer induced Tourette's. And so Tourette, it's that's probably not a very PC thing to say. The officers will make you cuss and scream. So if it wasn't officers or callers or firefighters or medics or people that walk up or just, if it wasn't one thing, it was another. It's a frustrating job. Like it is not a hard job to do once you get the skill set to do it. However, but that is not a job for everybody. It is definitely a calling. And you have to have the heart to do it.
So let's talk about for a second. There was a question here, and I don't know because I didn't talk to the kids after they asked the questions, but it was one about taking a break in a mental health room. And I just want you to stress, there is no mental health room. You may get a debrief on a call that was traumatic, like if for the water gardens, you definitely, the whole crew had a debrief.
We had several debriefings on that call.
And it's like counseling. It's like group counseling, basically.
And those are okay. You know, there's nothing wrong with those.
Yeah.
And I've had debriefings from calls that I've taken on the phone as well.
Yeah. But there is no, if you're a snowflake, this isn't the job for you.
No,
you need a timeout room so you can go and feel better about yourself. This is not the job for you.
This is not a job for a soft person. But so when I say it's not a job for a soft person, I don't mean it's not a job for a person without a heart. But it's not a job for a delicate person. If you are easily triggered or easily offended or you get your feelings hurt real easy, find another job. And I say that with as much compassion as I have. I am not delicate and I don't get my feelings hurt easily. I probably hurt other people's feelings easier than I get my own hurt. Just don't. Because you will get your feelings hurt. You will get offended. You will get triggered. And It is easier to just say that that's probably not the job for you than wasting a trainer's time and city's time investing money in you when you probably shouldn't have done that.
So what is harder, the mental or the physical part of being a dispatcher? Because there is a physical part to it, because you are
it's the mental part. It's the mental part. Because you can train your bladder to hold on. You know, I mean, you think about, I mean, realistically, if you have, like, if we're going to lock it down to the high school age, I know that, like, I know I'm old, okay, but I know that I remember high school, and I know that I had hard ass teachers for 8 hours a day sometimes. And I know that there were hard ass teachers that on certain days I could not go to the bathroom for 8 hours a day. And I trained my bladder to sit and buckle it up for a little while until, you know, on the state testing days where you could not get up and go to the bathroom. So you had to put on your big girl panties and just wait. So you can train your bladder for every once in a while, lock it down, and you're just going to have to wait. So it's the mental and emotional part is way harder than the physical part.
So talk to us about the good side. That tell us about, like, the baby being born, or another time that you saved someone's life while you were, like, on the telephone. Because I know that there's a lot of times that has happened.
I was the first dispatcher in the history of this. My phone is shaking. Sorry. I was the first dispatcher in the history of the city to deliver a baby over the phone. I have an award for it.
Yeah. Can you just saw it up there the other day?
I can get it.
It's high, I know.
I'm not that short. So it's the it's green screening.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry. Let me see if I turn my green screen off.
So they do acknowledge you when you do something cool. They do acknowledge you. It's a very cool. Her name was Cosentino at the time, but she delivered a baby via telephone, and I think that's pretty cool. Can you tell us about how that went down?
So she was a 18-year-old female that called in, and she called in having contractions, and she wasn't gonna make it. So we were able to give pre-arrival instructions, and her dad, we had him pull the shoelaces out of his boots to tie around the umbilical cord, and he got to cut the umbilical cord, and I got to hear the baby cry, and I got to sign the birth certificate when they brought it in.
And then they came up to the city when you got that award with the baby.
Yeah, I got to take a picture with the baby.
Yeah, that's way cool. Very cool. What's the funniest call that you've ever gotten? The lady, I think, is.
So we got a 911 call, and he just kind of blew my mind. We got a 911 call, and this guy was insistent that his house had been broken into, and it was a home invasion, or it was a burglary of a residence, and he needed the cops to come right now, that all of his marijuana had been stolen. What now? And I said, you want me to send officers to your home because your marijuana had been stolen? He said, yeah. And they took my lamps and my scales, and they took my trays. And I was like, so you were growing? He said, yeah, in my garage. And they took all of my shit. And I went, and you want me to send officers? He was like, I need the entire team. And I went, all right, you sure? He was like, he said, do I sound like I'm joking with you? And I was like, oh, no, sir, you don't. Not at all. I'm just making sure. Got him on the way.
So I told the students that a lot of times you don't know what happens after these calls. You get a call and it's kind of
PD. He was so mad at me. They brought him in for felony distribution and growing and intent to distribute and sell. And he was so mad at me. He cussed and screamed because we had a jail in our department. Yeah. So he cussed and screamed at me the entire time he was back there that I was a communist and a traitor, and I turned him in and narked on him, and he was going to tell everybody at the jail, and he was coming for me. And the officer went back there and told him that if he didn't stop threatening me, that they were going to get him for terroristic threats as well.
So have you been threatened very often?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Anytime that you were like actually scared, because I think that guy was just a nutcase in my head.
No.
I would have been just like, you're out of your mind.
No.
No.
There's probably times I should have been, but no.
So I still think you should tell about the lady that ran up and down with the thing.
Oh yeah, no, she was another pleasure. She was a regular though.
More than once. I was just gonna say, yeah, more than once.
She was a regular. She used to call us, she was a full moon regular. So she used to call us every full moon, like clockwork. Like we would be like, oh, so-and-so's calling tonight, full moon. We would like, clap. Can I call in tomorrow? And they were like, oh no, and it's your turn for call taking. Nope, nose goes. Not it. And she would call and we'd see her on caller ID and be like, no. She would run up and down the main street in our town, butt naked, with foil on her head. She would make hats, and they would look different every time. Like we had a trophy case of them, and tell us that she was waiting for her people to come get her, and she would lay naked on the center striping and wait for her people. And she was like in her 70s. So it's not like it was a pretty young body to look at.
But you had to send somebody every single time. Every time.
And she was usually intoxicated. So she had to come in and sit in the drunk tank.
Naked. In an orange suit? I mean, did you have something to cover her with?
No, because she was in the drunk tank. So it was a danger situation. So she would sit in there, and sometimes she would finger her paint.
Oh, thank you. That's gross.
Oh yeah, I'm telling you, she was a pleasure.
Okay. The other one that you told me about just the other day was the car that was totaled.
Oh yeah. Well, that was on when I was on the truck. We had we had run a 1050 major, which is the major accident, and there had been a 1050 major. I didn't run that initial call, but they had towed the car to a wrecking yard in River Oaks here in Fort Worth. And I guess it was like a summer like this where it was just stupid hot. And the wrecker had brought the car in, and they were out doing stuff in the yard, and they heard a baby crying. And the guy in there just started freaking out, just losing his mind. He was like, I can't get into this car. There's a baby crying in there. And he's like losing his mind. So they called the engine company out. Engine company's got EMS come in because there's a baby crying. And this car is jacked. Like, it's like there's no more roof. It's sitting on, like, the seats are not even up anymore. Like it looks flat now. And they're like getting ready to can opener this SUV open. And they finally get it peeled back, and they start digging through this car trying to find this baby. And there's blood in the car because like it was a bad wreck, right? So they're looking for like fresh blood and they're trying to find this baby. They find it, they like see an arm and they go to start pulling this baby out. It was one of those like, looks like it's a real baby doll. It was a doll on a timer set to cry at a certain time. It was
like
hungry.
one of the ones that they teach.
It was for home ec.
Yeah.
It was for home ec.
Mm. So is that the funniest call you've ever received? Is that what is there another funnier
no, sorry. I've had, there's psych calls. So psych calls were always my favorites. Only because so I did find out that true schizophrenics, when they hear voices in one ear or the other. It's not in stereo. So it's like literally like somebody's whispering in your ear on one side or the other. I learned that. But I mean, so really and truly, I will tell you, you really shouldn't laugh at your patients when they're having a true psych. But that's our only outlet with EMS. Like if you don't laugh, if you don't find some humor in some of it, you'll go crazy yourself, right? I've had patients where, I was on scene doing compressions and my partner went back to the truck to get, something. We got it as, I think it was a back pain, and got into the apartment or the stairwell, I think at that point. And it was like, this guy he was dead. Like he was, we were doing chest compressions. So I was like, oh my God, he's not breathing. There's no pulse. This is not back pain. This is like, we're doing CPR. So I get there and I'm doing CPR and I'm like, clearing his airway. And my partner went back to the truck to get the airway bag so that we can and he's calling for fire. And the neighbor comes running out of her apartment and she goes, man, do you need help? I know VCR. And it stopped me. I was like, what? She said, I know VCR. I can help. Do you mean CPR? Well, whatever. Nope, I got it. I got it. I had one patient tell me that her son had Smiley Mighty Jesus.
Had what?
Smiley Mighty Jesus. She was trying to tell me he had spinal meningitis.
Okay.
Yeah, he got the Smiley Mighty Jesus.
Awesome. Okay. Let's see. Have you ever messed up?
I did have one, and I loved her to death. We had one little girl. She would call 911 and hang up. She would call 911 and just leave it as an open line. And we would get there not knowing what was going on. So it was an unknown problem. So police, fire, and EMS would show up, right? Because it was an open air line. So it would be a PD shows up to clear the scene, and then they would clear fire and EMS in. And it was this like 11-year-old girl with Down syndrome. She would call 911 just to give out hugs.
Well, you got your hug for that day.
We all got hugs.
Let's talk about that for a second, though. You PD clears a scene before you guys get to go in because we don't need another injury.
Well, I don't carry a gun.
Right. So that's one thing. Your safety is paramount for the officers, but also for the dispatcher, or for not the dispatchers, the EMS in that case. Mm-hmm. Do you have to practice your typing speed? Are you allowed to? Well, we already talked about correcting, but what was your typing speed when you were dispatching, do you think? Because you got
about 70. It was about 70.
The minimum, I think, was 55 when I was hired. So you have to type at least 55 minute, 55 words a minute, because it's coming at you quickly. If you're on a pursuit like you were on, that's coming fast. And if somebody gets on the telephone while you're taking a call and they're excited, they're talking fast, and you're trying to get down everything that
it was at 70 with minimal errors. I could get up to about 85
if we were just going without worrying about it.
Right.
Have you, let's see.
We used to have competitions in dispatch when we were dead.
Yeah. Is it worth it? Even though you see the toughest part of things, is it still worth it?
Absolutely. I would never trade a moment of it. Not even because of the water gardens. I would never trade a day of it.
So I'm not gonna ask you if you don't want to, but are there any other calls that you took on
Absolutely
that affected you like the water gardens?
Not as bad as the water gardens, no. The water gardens was absolutely my most traumatizing call. And probably because it was face to face. Like that mother's face haunts me. Like I can still hear her voice. We had like as a whole call center, I know we round robin one call specifically, which means we just passed it off and all cried together as we took the call. We had a 7-year-old.
So when it is traumatic, when it's something like you're going to explain right now, if I get too choked up and I'm going to break down, the next dispatcher will take it until they can't together. Right. So
yeah.
I just want to make sure.
So we called it in that center, we called it round robining, which means it just went round robin, you know, or hot, you can call it hot potato, whatever. It just went around the call center. Right. And there were only ever 3 of us max in that call center at any time. But there was a 7-year-old and a 4-year-old in the house, and the 7-year-old boy and a 4-year-old girl, and his mom, she sat him down and told him to watch his sister, and she said, "Daddy should be home soon." I called him and told him to come home, and he said, "Okay, where are you going?" And she said, "Out to the garage. Don't come out there." Well, I don't know what made this little boy go check on her, but she went out to the garage and hung herself. And he called 911 and then went out to the garage. After he found her, he called 911 and went out to the garage to cut her down himself. He was 7. And he was like, "I have to cut my mommy down. She can't breathe. She's choking." And it'll tear you apart. Yeah. Listening to him cry, asking her why she did this. "Don't leave me, mommy."
Yeah. Were most of your really hard calls like that with kids?
Yes.
Yeah.
I almost didn't put this ward up. I actually almost threw this ward away. 3 months after I got this award, I did CPR on this baby. The baby's dead. They slept with that baby in the bed with them and rolled over on her. We did CPR on that baby for 20 minutes. The baby's gone.
And still you say it's all worth it.
Yeah, I have 7 lifesaver awards for CPR that I've done over the phone, and people have walked out of the hospital. I've got awards for golden hour awards, which are, there's a golden hour with stroke calls where you've got an hour from onset of symptoms to the time you get them to a stroke facility, that it matters, where they can walk out of that hospital with minimal stroke, issues, that I've got awards for. I've
thousands of calls that you haven't got an award for, but have turned out.
There's an officer that is a lieutenant at Schertz Police Department today, because I was able to get him back up fast enough. You can look it up. I-35 shooting involving Schertz police officer, that he took, and you can look it up for him and play him the video. It's Officer Kunz, Kunz. And I was the dispatcher on the other end of that radio when he took live fire on I-35 southbound. I think it was on Cops or World's Dumbest or something, one of those. But I was the dispatcher on the other end of that radio where he took 35, I think he took 35 rounds to his police cruiser that night.
And you got him back up so quickly that he's still alive.
That he's alive.
Yeah. I mean, that would be like right there. All of the people whose lives you have saved would make it worth all of the other stuff, I think. Is there anything that you would like them, parting words that you would like them to know?
If you're expecting to get into it for the paycheck, don't do it for that reason. The paycheck's not the reason. Everybody loves a firefighter. Everybody loves a firefighter. Dispatchers are the unsung heroes. The first responders.
Though. Getting better.
But getting better. Yeah, and it's always worth it. It's always worth it.
How many certifications do you have overall? I mean, you've got, I know you've got close to I've got a whole binder.
I've got three binders full. I don't know. I've got my SWAT dispatch. See, it's another thing too. There's certifications within certifications. So that's another cool thing with dispatch that you can do is there's a tactical dispatch that you can get into. So that's one of the things that I did is I went out with the SWAT team. So when the SWAT team got dispatched, I went out with the SWAT team and sat in the SWAT truck and documented everything that was happening with the SWAT team. So when there were felony SWAT warrants served and the SWAT team got called out for anything that the SWAT team did, I went with them. So that's a cool thing that the dispatcher can do that they don't necessarily tell you about. They don't advertise that. But that's, cool things that dispatchers can do. And that's, like when Katrina happened, tactical dispatchers got sent out with that, not regular dispatchers. So that when call centers get taken out and they're put in, vans and stuff, tactical dispatchers go out there and set up new comm centers. So it's a pretty cool certification to have. It's a 4-day course, but you get to go train with SWAT too.
Very cool. I'm just trying to look and see. Oh, how do you stay calm in situations?
You learn to put things in a box. So I've always been a turn it off until the BS is over type person. I've ever been a oh my God in an emergency type person. So I have always been able to check out. I don't want to say check out until it's over, but I've
emotionally
learned how to emotionally you learn how to turn it off until because I even do it with my own kids, and a lot of people are not able to do that.
You can watch her when something happens, it's like her little brain clicks and you see a different Christy. It's like just
I go into paramedic mode.
Yeah.
I turn it off. I turn mom off. I turn sister off. I turn daughter off, and I switch into professional mode. And you learn how to put it in a box. But again, that's why I'm telling you, go sit, go watch. Even if you're thinking about becoming EMS or police officer, or, I don't know, fire, I think you can do it too. Do write outs, go sit, go watch, go see if you can even do that. Because even when I was doing EMS and people were like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, I think I want to do that too. Yeah, come right out with me. Do that first before you sign up for school and put money into that. Go do a few write outs, because I had students that would come right out, and the first time they saw blood, or I had my hand in somebody's chest, because I have had my hand in people's chest holding organs in, it was, vomit city, or they were passing out and I had another patient. Please don't do that to a paramedic. Go write out. Go do a write out. Go sit with somebody. Do that first before you start investing money into stuff. Go make sure that that's something that's your bag, that's your gig, that's really what you want to do.
Yeah, great. That is a calling. All right. I think that we have answered all of the questions.
Did we get all of them? Are you sure?
I'm pretty sure. Let's just...
I think there was one in there that asked if have I ever been at a loss for words.
Oh,
and the answer to that is yes. Yes.
Did you ever just not know what to say?
Yeah, yes, for numerous reasons. I've been so mad, I've not known what to say. And I think the other one too was, have I ever hung up on a 911 caller?
Oh yes, tell that one. Tell that one.
Yeah, yeah, I have.
There's a point to that.
Yeah, I have. So I had a caller that had called 3 times before, and we had sent officers out 3 times before. And same in the last hour and a half, not just the same day, it was the last hour and a half. He had called, we sent officers out. They had determined he was not intoxicated, he was not a psych patient, there was no medical reason for them to be there, there was no emergency, there was no reason for him to be calling 911 other than he wanted somebody to scream and cuss at. That was it. So this 4th time he called, he was cussing and screaming at me, and I took it for a little while, and yes sir, okay, yeah, all right, is there anything else? Sir, is there anything that you need? Oh, you this and you that and you this and you that, and I pay your tax dollars. Great. You know what? I live in the city too. I pay my own tax dollars, and that's wonderful. Okay, yep, sir, that's great. Okay, well, if you're paying my paycheck, if that's okay, well, if you're paying my paycheck, then I would appreciate a raise. Yes, that's wonderful. Great. Okay. And and I took it for a little while, and I said, sir, here's the deal. I'm done being cussed and screamed at. So if you do not lower your voice, and if you don't stop cussing at me, I am going to terminate this phone call. You can't hang up on me. I'm a tax-paying citizen. It's illegal to hang up on a 911 caller. No, sir, I have determined there is no reason. You do not have any kind of medical or emergency. I can terminate this call now. You can't do bleep, 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 bleep. Okay, I'm not going to continue to be cussed and screamed at. So I'm going to hang up the phone call now if you don't stop cussing and screaming at me. And then he called me a very pretty 4-letter word that started with a C, and I hung up the phone. And I still sent a police officer out.
And you still documented everything. That's what I wanted
to get. Still documented everything, especially because I had still sent an officer out, and I documented in there. I had told him I was going to be terminating the phone call. I had told him several times to stop cussing and screaming, and then I was terminating the phone call, and blah, blah, blah. And this is what was said. And it was documented in the phone tapes. At this time, I documented blah, blah, blah. I terminated the phone call. And this officer was responding. Sent an officer. He was arrested for 911 abuse and harassment of a 911 operator.
Just using up
And
time. If a call had come in that really was an emergency that got, you know, 2 rings instead of 1 because you had to deal with him, he could have caused somebody's life to be in danger. So
I would have dropped the call at that point, but
all right. I think we really
more likely he would have tied up an officer before he would have tied up a 911 operator at that point.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm sure that from this, they're going to have a lot of other questions, and hopefully I can remember enough of your stories that I
just email me. I will email you stories. You can read them to them.
Okay.
You probably won't have my panache when telling them, but you know.
I know you're the storyteller of the family, but okay.
If we plan it out, I could probably figure out a way to come have story time one day this semester, maybe.
Okay. Well, I will check. The new teacher starts not this Monday, but the following Monday, but I will make sure that they know that you're available.